Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of my interview um, process. Today, I have a um, very experienced guest. Her name is Noelle Dodge, and she's a trauma-informed psychotherapist, an IAO accredited life coach, and an intuitive healer. She started her journey about 10 years ago. She formed a program called BOND, BOND. Those are the acronyms, I guess. What she does basically is to address the unconscious beliefs that impact on our behaviors on a subconscious level. And by identifying the patterns of thoughts with a trauma-informed approach, her program can help us reprogram our unhealthy beliefs that sabotage our lives and relationships. So, welcome to the podcast, Noelle. So, I'll set the stage. I will leave you to explain more about yourself, your journey, and how you gotten here.
First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. Because right now, I don't care where you are in the world, we're all experiencing something collectively. And I think collectively it's going to take us to heal individually as well. So this is a great opportunity. And I love the UK. I don't know what they're doing over there. I know I'm very familiar with Heads Together, and I don't know if they've been playing any role in any kind of trauma support out there, but I would love to hear more about that another time, maybe privately or whatever the case is. But I was really inspired by Heads Together years ago when I saw what they were doing. So it's I'm so happy to be able to talk to you about this. And then on top of it, you're in the UK. But a little bit about me and my journey. I was the youngest of three, born to a Chicago police officer who was very conservative and a mother who was very liberal. So our 2016 election was not upsetting for me whatsoever. It was like family dinner. But that just put me in a very unique position that most people were not in. And I think since 9/11, we've really been seeing changes in our society. I know millennials get a bad rap, but I love millennials. I think they're amazing. And it started with 9/11, but since then, there's been mass shootings in malls, libraries, churches, concerts, safe schools, safe places that we all grew up in and didn't have to think twice about. These children have had to watch that on the news, and I think there's been a little bit of desensitization to it. Like a lot of people are desensitized to it. And it's just like, oh, another mass shooting, oh, another thing. But when we look through the eyes of a child, you're talking about an entire generation that experienced a childhood none of us have ever experienced. And now we see a new generation of children who are in lockdown, going back to school with plastic shields on their desks, or not going back to school at all and being homeschooled. So right now we're having a lot of uncertainty. And in those uncertain times, that's either where people make or break, And for me, it's really important that we look at the belief system while we're in this lockdown. And I know that's coming to an end, and we're going to be back out there soon. So this is really good timing. But for us to really examine our belief systems. And then we have the racial unrest going on as well, in addition to the lockdown. So there's a lot of uncertain things coming up, but I think it's also beautiful because the topics people didn't want to talk about, we're being forced to have those conversations. And by having those conversations, we can bridge those gaps. If I'm trying to build a bridge, I can only get so far if someone isn't on the other side building it towards me as well. If I'm just trying to go across, I'm not going to make it. But if I'm building on one end and you're building on the other end, and we can come to a middle ground, we now have a bridge to cross those waters. And I think that's what's happening. Even though it looks messy, it looks scary, it looks chaotic, I do think it's headed in that direction. So, so I just wanted to share a little bit about that. And also, you know, growing up as a child of a Chicago police officer, I remember back in the 70s and 80s, being scared when he'd go to work. And there was nothing going on like what's going on today. So I can only imagine the terror or the fear that children of first responders have every time their mother or father puts on their uniform and walks out the door. And I think if we just kind of, I wanted to mention that because I think there's a lot of anger towards police right now. And that's someone's father, that's someone's mother, that's someone's son, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's brother, that's someone's sister. And I think if we can just look at the human element of each of us, whether they're in a uniform or out of a uniform, we are all humans. And when I hurt, others are hurt. And when others are hurt, I hurt, because we are all one. We are part of the collective universal law of oneness. So if we're focusing on just ourselves, we're not moving towards the collective good.
Right. Okay. Yeah, good to know your background and how you. But I really wanted you to, like, what motivated you to go into psychotherapy, and what inspired the decision to start your program and to help people heal from trauma?
Good question. I feel like I was born this way. When I was in high school and I was graduating, my vision was to open a 24-hour daycare center for third shift and single moms or homeless moms that don't have a place for their children. You know, and during the day they could send them to school, but at night, where do they sleep? So that was a vision I had senior year in high school. Fortunately and unfortunate, but not unfortunate, fortunately, I'd gotten pregnant and had a child of my own. So my plans took a turn. And it wasn't until 2008 when I was part of a downsizing from a corporation where I lost my identity and my ego into my job completely. But at that time, I just was like, you know, what I really missed about that job was people coming in and telling me about, you know, do you have a couple of minutes? And they'd come in, they'd close the door, and they'd tell me about a problem, and I would kind of coach them through it, which had nothing to do with what I was getting paid to do. So my husband at the time said, you know, you are like a natural counselor. Maybe you should go into counseling. And I went into counseling. I went into back to school to get my degree. And during that time, I was doing a lot of Kundalini yoga, clearing my energy, healing work, things like that, to deal with a lifetime. I could go on with stories of different traumas throughout my life, but part of my journey was when I did the real work, when I really looked in and did my work, I saw not my fault, but I attracted those people into my life. I brought those experiences into my life, and I am grateful for all the trauma that I've endured, because I can relate to people on another level. So on my journey for education, I was getting my associate's degree. So I didn't even have an associate's degree, but I was working as a master level clinician in psychosocial rehabilitation program. It's a PSR, group counselor. So I was doing the work of a master's level group therapist, but I didn't even have an associate's degree at the time. And I was so fortunate. And part of that reason was my supervisor said, you've got it instinctively. What you got, I can't teach. You just need to know the clinical end as we go along. So he gave me those opportunities that I would have never had, I think, going anywhere else. And after a few years, he was like, you know, you have a following, and it's the people that all the other clients don't want to work with that are attracted to me that I worked with. And he's like, and I don't understand, what is that? And I said, trauma. trauma. If you look at all of the people that gravitate towards me, we work on the trauma. I don't tell them, you know, oh, you're bipolar and that's what you are for the rest of your life. So let's just sit and you can just vent to me for an hour and I'll get paid for you to vent to me. That's not why I went into therapy. I went into therapy to see people come over their struggles, to get past their diagnosis, because I don't believe mental illness is a lifelong debilitating, unless you have a neurological imbalance. Most of it is trauma. Unresolved trauma is the exact same symptoms of borderline personality disorder. Unresolved childhood trauma is exact same symptoms as ADHD. And it's just easier to throw a pill or a diagnosis than to really dig in and look at the work. Because if we look at the trauma, now we're digging into the family business and people don't want to share their family business, right? So while I was working, as a psychotherapist at this facility, I created a group called Break Out, Not Down, which is the acronym for BOND. So it was about breaking out of who you became to survive in this world and break out the superhero inside of you that's been trying to come out. But every time we kind of try to step out to be ourselves, someone's there to smack you down. Someone's there to stop you. Someone's there to tell you, not for you, you're not good enough, you're not this. And so when we go in and we look at those belief systems of not good enough, someone smacks us down and says, you're not good enough. You don't have any reaction. You don't go into this, shame coma. You don't go into the refrigerator for Ben and Jerry's. You just, you understand, oh, this is not aligned with me. This position is not aligned with me. This person is not aligned with me. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you're not aligned. And when you're aligned, it flows, it works. And a lot of times we have resistance because it's like, I love this person and I want it to work. And really, you can love that person and let them go. If they're not aligned with you, it's constantly going to be a barrier. So that was one of the things that when I decided to become a life coach and leave mental health, I took my BOND program with me and I've been working on it ever since. So it went from a Facebook group back in 2017 to now an online course, and and I also do it in person. I'm hardly ever on Facebook anymore. I lived on Facebook. I'm not on there like 24/7. Now I'm like hardly ever on Facebook because it really became a distraction for my clients, because they would go in to do the work in the program and then they'd get a notification and then that would distract them and then they would go over here and they go. So as much as I'm grateful to Facebook and I'm grateful for the learning experience of the programs, it really became very clear that it's too much of a distraction for people who have trauma. They usually are easily distracted. They usually have a hard time focusing. So to put them in a program that's a little chaotic just didn't make any sense. So I'm grateful for learning those bumps and bruises along the way, but it worked out okay. And I'm continuing to improve it as much as I can with different, like I have one for first responders, one for LGBT, one for, there's like different categories. Because first responders, I think there has to be a new approach, which I believe if we have a trauma-informed approach, then you're going to have a different outcome. So let's say for Laquan McDonald, for instance, he was shot 16 times by former Officer Van Dyke. That officer had over 20 complaints against him. One of those complaints cost the city of Chicago $350,000 for being aggressive at a routine traffic stop. That was prior to Laquan's death. And if an intervention had taken place, not fire him, not, but an intervention of taking a look at what's going on with this particular officer, and maybe taking him off the streets and getting him that help and support that he needs, it wouldn't have cost the city $5 million. And more importantly, Laquan McDonald's mother wouldn't have a child buried. So now we see Jason Van Dyke, who was the police officer that shot him. He's in jail. His wife has all the debt. His wife has no child support, no income from him, nothing. And she has 3 children who are now fatherless. So this is how we go from, this fatherless child who was gunned down by a police officer who now has 3 children who are fatherless. And we're not looking at the families of first responders. They have the highest rate of suicide, drug abuse, high school dropouts, teen pregnancy. The statistics are there. No one wants to look at it because we love our first responders and we don't want to shame them or anything like that. But really, we're letting them down. They're protecting and serving our families, and their families are falling apart. So having an ex-husband who was a fireman, having a father who was a police officer, I'm very familiar with the families of first responders and the needs that are not met. And so to go into trauma work, I can't leave my first responders behind. And it's a very hot topic right now because, people are very upset with police officers right now and things like that. And there is a disrespect that is out there. One of the things that really was pivotal for me when I was doing my research for my master's degree was Martin Luther King preached with a Bible about peaceful protests and to judge someone by their character, not the color of their skin. And at the same time, we had this white madman in prison, Charles Manson, screaming race wars and kill the pigs. And what we see today is very similar to the words of Charles Manson and not the words of Dr. Martin Luther King. So if we want to look at racism, I think we really need to look at whose voice are we responding to? Whose voice are we giving power to? Whose voice are we choosing to replicate? And it's not that of Dr. Martin Luther King. And to me, that's the most racist thing that you could do, is to silence him and enhance what a crazy white man was saying behind bars. To me, I find that as a white person, I find it racist that we would listen to him over someone who clearly had peaceful protests. He had the understanding of how to treat one another, how to live cooperatively, how to use scripture in our everyday to keep us in balance and to show love. And this journey is like come full circle because of all the trauma that I've experienced within my own life. I have seen a lot of racism against myself, or against women, especially white women with blonde hair. There is a great deal of prejudice. Everyone assumes you've got it easy, so they want to humble you. Everyone assumes that, doors just open for you, so they want to make it harder for you. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. I've been followed in stores. I've been watched. I've been harassed. I have been mistreated just for standing up to the counter and saying hi and having someone go, 2 nice eyes or whatever. They're just nasty and rude to you. And it's like, what happened? I didn't even do anything just because of who I am. And that's so I think, I'm not going to blame that on having blonde hair or being white. That has to do with that person and their beliefs. And as a trauma-informed therapist, I just have to show compassion and throw love at that person and go about my day and not take it personally, because that is not within me, that is within them. And so that's what I try to help people with, is getting to the root of their beliefs so that when they have an incident like that and someone attacks them unjustly, we don't go back to those records of, oh, it's because of the color of my skin, or, oh, it's because I'm a woman, oh, it's because I'm this, oh, it's because I'm that, or I did something wrong, or I'm not good enough. None of that crap. What that person says and does is a reflection of that person, period. That's it. So easier said than done.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Yeah, there's some things you mentioned, that really stood out for me. Yeah, like trauma can be traced to the family. I mean, your upbringing and everything. And you also mentioned that you feel you were born to do this work. Um, not many people get to know their own, know their strengths or their passions. And you also mentioned something about your husband at the time encouraging you, to go into counseling. So sometimes we have that blind spot too of not knowing what our superpower is, and yeah, that's something we really need to work on. But you know, people, from your explanation, it seems like everybody has is everybody's carrying some kind of trauma or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our parents, I'll just say the average parents is not that conscious, so they feel that it's their responsibility um, to steer a child, in in a way that they feel is going to be favorable for the child, and by doing that, they are unconsciously, creating a kind of friction
Yeah.
within the child because the child has their own how do I put their own natural talents and proclivities and things that they love doing. But the parent feels that this is the best way to go. So right from childhood, we're not unified, in a way, and we carry that burden, for a long time. But the thing, I've heard from a lot of people, that they believe that they have turned out well, because we manage to function in society. Um, but I don't like. I tell some people, that you might think that that you're fully, fully well or
Aware.
something or whole or something,
And you're
but
not.
if you look, yeah, but you're not. Nobody can be. It's not well. Nobody can be. It's not like you need to experience something. Like you said, on your own journey, you lost your job
Mm-hmm.
and other experiences you said you've had. And I know from my own experience too that there's a moment where there's one kind of intense um, experience that we go through, that wakes us up basically, And
Mm-hmm.
when you wake up, that's when you start reflecting and thinking back, and understanding that your journey has actually been, filled with trauma and trying to heal it and one other trauma, and
Yeah.
so there are lots of unresolved issues, from the past that bring us to where we are. And you also mentioned something about attracting wrong people into your life, which is part of that unhealed part of us, Yeah. So I was going to the question I was going to ask was, what exactly what what you think the nature of trauma is, which you've explained. Then your bond program, you said you have a formula or a framework that you use to work on it. And yeah, I would like to just know what you. Yeah, I saw what's it called? The SA, the SAMSA safety. Can you walk us through those principles?
So with the principles, what I got those from was from SAMHSA, and it's for trauma. If you look at it's complicated, so I want to try and bundle it in a package for you. When you look at trauma, the first stage of psychosocial development is 0 to 18 months, with learning the balance of trust versus mistrust, specifically with the mother, just the mother. The dad can be involved and all of that, but when it's the first 18 months, it is building trust. And what this does is instills hope in the child. And then the next stage is the mother and the father. And this is when the child starts to express their free will. You know, you say no and they go right for it. You know, like that's the perfect time to have dad kind of come in and support mom. But at times we're not aware of these different stages. And with trauma, you have to go back to the basics. You have to go all the way back to trust versus mistrust. So with me, in 2018, I experienced so much, like I never thought that I would ever be in a position like that. But I had lost pretty much everything. And I had experienced several forms of trauma, like one being a divorce, one losing my house, you know, just a lot of things blowing up in my world all at once. So I was having the tower moment, right? And in that tower moment, I had the choice to just completely let it destroy me, or really look within and say, you know, what is it that I'm doing that is attracting this into my life? And I really had to look at it. And a lot of it was, so I did EMDR. There's different forms of trauma therapy. One of them is EMDR. They put panels in each of your hands and it vibrates like a phone. It's not going to electric shock or anything, but it's like it vibrates and it goes left, right, left, right. And I had my whole list of the people who done me wrong and what I'm going to, you know, why I'm not good enough in their world. And the one person I did not have on my list was my father. And he was my safe person. He was my go-to. I didn't have any unresolved trauma with him. It was all good. That's what came up in my first session, was my safe person. But that was the one that was so deeply ingrained. And it wasn't anything he said out of, you know, and I think that's why it didn't stick. It's not the things that we say that are so cruel that really stick in the subconscious belief. My father was saying something very loving. He was, every time I would do something, especially sports, he would say, "Oh, you were only a boy. You would have so many more opportunities." Well, that belief left me with, I will never be a boy, so I will never be good enough, and I will never be able to accomplish my goals because I'm a girl. He meant no harm, but that was so deeply ingrained in my brain that I was seeing that evidence of that everywhere else. My mother, my sister, my brother, my cousin, my this, my that, you know, like they're all showing me I'm not good enough. My boyfriend, my husband, my that, you know, like as my years went on, you know, like from my first love to my last, I kept attracting people who made me feel, no one can make you feel, but for a lack of better terms, to make it easy for this conversation, made me feel not good enough. The only person that made me feel not good enough was myself. Because if I had the boundaries, if I had, which is what we teach, if I had the boundaries, if I had the language, if I had the understanding of where the belief came from, I'm now empowered to say, we're not aligned. As much as I love you, as much as I think you're a wonderful person, this relationship can't go any further because my need is not being met of love and belonging because I don't feel like I'm ever good enough. Power and significance, because I'm not good in, you know, like, so, and that was the other thing in Bond that we put in there. Not only did we do Erik Erikson's psychosocial development stages, we also look at William Glasser's 5 basic needs. And in William Glasser's 5 basic needs, if your need for survival is being threatened, job loss, loss of your home, loss of, you know, security, safety, someone breaks into your home, this threatens your survival need. And when your survival need is threatened, you go into fight, flight, and freeze. You are no longer thinking logically. You're only using your past experiences and your instincts to address this issue. Now, if it's a long-term issue, where this is going on 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of prolonged threats to your survival, love, and belonging, and it could be different things, like one losing your house, another one is, you know, divorce, or another one's a job loss, or another one is this. And you're seeing all these different experiences that are coming up. It is teaching you something of what you need to address, where you need to get back to the core beliefs. And I did a lot of subconscious reprogramming. I did a lot of, you know, trauma work for myself. Then I started to incorporate it into a program to serve others, because not every person heals the same. And you have to take an independent approach to your healing. And with Bond, it kind of gives a buffet of there's this, this, and that. And you can kind of go in and customize your healing journey, because mine might be abandonment. You know, my mother had postpartum depression when I was a baby. So there was a disconnect in those first 18 months. My father left the family for 6 months when I was 6 months old. So there was a break and a disconnect in that bonding. So abandonment is really, really deep in my subconscious beliefs of not being good enough, because if I was good enough, they'd stay, right? So that's hogwash. That's not true. But that is the belief that gets held on from the first year of life. When I was just before I turned 1, they changed my name. So now I can't even trust the name that I've been given, because everyone's been calling me Jennifer, and now all of a sudden I'm Noelle. Who's Noelle? Like what? And that delayed my speech. I didn't speak till I was almost 3. So I kind of had like a little identity crisis at 1 year old, you know, like my father was gone, my name gets changed, you know, like all kinds of crazy stuff was happening. But my parents were doing the best that they could. I mean, like when I think about it, my mom was 25 years old. I was her 3rd child. She had no vehicle. She had no job. She was very much women's rights and ERA, and my father was a very conservative police officer. So this was a very dynamic group of people that I was observing for 3 years, you know, because my brother would say one thing, my sister would say another. One would get in trouble, the other one wouldn't. The one that's lying is getting rewarded. The one that's telling the truth is getting in trouble. I'm not saying a word.
Yeah,
So,
I was just trying. I heard what you said about the racism and the, you know, but I deliberately didn't want us to go into, you know, that topic, because it should be a topic of its own that should take maybe, you know, 1 hour to discuss.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it's one of the, how would I put it, it's a historical problem. It's been there for a very long time. It's been manifesting itself, you know, over those years too. And this time around, you know, it's become very, how would I, very obvious, you know, due to social media and, you know, people being able to record events live and post them. So there's no telling if such events have not been occurring before, that, you know, that cannot be proven, or believed. So there are a lot of things happening in the world now. This coronavirus pandemic, you know, I believe, I just think is the world's biggest psychological breakdown or something. You know, is traumatizing the whole world. Everybody, most of the businesses are broken already. Nobody knows how the economy is going to recover from what is happening. The only the only beings that have any good now is the environment, and you know, because there's less pollution going on, because there's less activities.
We're all
Yeah. So the environment is really having it good. It hasn't had it this good in a long while. Apart from them, those beings, you know, for us, the human beings in the world, you know, we I don't want to minimize the impact of the coronavirus and the people that have died, you know, for it. But it really, if you look at it philosophically, you know, it's like the world. It's like the world. You know, Earth is telling us to stay at home. You know, and think through how we're going to live. You know, going forward. And that should be the real lesson, you know, for individuals, for governments, for communities. Everybody really needs to think like that was what this period, you know, that's what this period actually brought up for us, you know. And everybody being at home, is it was more of a collective, how do I put it, enlightenment or awakening for everybody. Yeah, for us to actually rethink how we live and our relationship, you know, with the people around us, our close people around us, and also our relationships with, you know, with the external environment, with external other people and the environment too. Yeah. So with this trauma that's going on, what would be your advice to people that their lives have changed or their lives have been devastated by the pandemic in one way or the other? I know a lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs when the economy reopens, because businesses are not going to be able to support whatever level of activities they were doing before the pandemic. Yeah, I'm already seeing a lot of, well, here in the UK, a lot of companies are bringing out numbers of people that are going to lose their jobs and all that. And it's just a reality that we're going to face. So what words of encouragement do you have, or, you know, how can we manage this period?
If I had to put it in one word, I would say gratitude. Because since this pandemic, I've had a lot of new clients coming in because affairs are being uncovered, gambling, money issues, lying about, you know, taking out a loan, and this could all be covered up as long as we're working and in the world. But now that there's a pandemic and jobs are being lost or money is uncertain, the other partner is starting to pay attention to things they weren't paying attention to before, and things are coming to light. Or even just teenagers sneaking out in the middle of the night or doing whatever. All this stuff is coming to light because everyone's locked up in the house together. So now we're starting to pay attention and see things that maybe we didn't want to see. We kind of saw it, but it's like, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'm just going to put that aside. Well, now it's in your face, got to deal with it. So when we give it gratitude, like when I found out something absolutely devastating that I have known since 2014, but I have convinced myself it wasn't happening. And when I finally had the undeniable fact in front of me and I had to face with it, I had nothing but gratitude, because the brain fog was gone. I stopped telling myself, you know, why do I keep thinking this? If it's not true, then why do I keep doing this? Like, what's wrong with me that I keep thinking this and it's not actually happening? It was actually happening. I was not listening to my intuition. I was listening to my intuition, but I wasn't acting on my intuition. I wasn't investigating. I wasn't going further. I wasn't looking at the evidence. Instead, I was just going, I know this is happening, but I'm not going to look at the evidence, you know? And once I saw for myself, it was freeing. As much as it was hurtful and painful, and I had to look at it and examine it, it gave me freedom. It gave me the truth. And sometimes the truth hurts, but the way I explain it to clients is, if I have a chalice and it's got some mucky, dirty liquid in it, I don't want to pour in anything fresh into that. I want to dump that out, because anything fresh I put into it is going to be contaminated. So if we're not willing to let go of what's in us that is not serving us, then anything that gets poured into us eventually is going to get corroded. Anything that gets poured into us is going to get contaminated. And we have to be consciously aware of, like, and being okay with your dark side, you know, like they talk about, you have a dark shadow or whatever they call it. And it's being okay with that. Like, oh, I know when this happens, I act that way. So I have to put boundaries in place for myself, not for others, for myself, so that I don't act out in this behavior that never serves me. It doesn't serve me when I do that. going through this journey, I was sharing a lot of my personal stuff on Facebook. Well, that hurt a lot of my family. And in my mind at the time, I was like, hey, if you didn't want me to talk about it, you shouldn't have done it. That wasn't right. That wasn't right, because it didn't give them the space to correct their behavior. It didn't give them the space to own it and do that privately. Instead, I'm like, oh, my sister, my mother, my this, my that, you know, like this was done to me. And it was me trying to heal that, not thinking about how that isn't going to serve the relationship. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to work through that my mother is in my life, that I do have a relationship with her, because, and here's one of the things I really want to stress, there are a lot of unexperienced, uneducated life coaches out there that are encouraging people to terminate their relationship with their parents. And a lot of those therapists are in their 20s, just coming out of college, still living with their parents. so you know, and I say that lightly, but not, you know, when you cut off your parents, you are cutting off your own lifeline. They could be abusive, they could be horrible, and you don't have to deal with them. You don't have to have them in your life. However, when you have resentment and hatred for them, you have resentment and hatred for yourself. So it's no different like a divorced parent who's bashing the father or the mother to the child. That child is taking that subconscious belief in as there's something wrong with me because I'm like my dad or I'm like my mom. So there's a default in me because, you know, there's the defect in me because I'm just like my mother and my dad hates my mom. So those are ways that we subconsciously harm our children too, and put in thoughts into their minds without ever saying a word. It's how we treat one another. So you can be divorced and be an active father far more than a father who's sitting on the couch or stopping at the bar to get a drink before he goes home, never goes to the kids' practices, never goes to any of the events at the, you know, and if he does, it's just in and out and okay, checked off the list, I gotta go. There's fathers that live in the home that are not present. And there are fathers that are divorced, not living in the home, that are involved, treat the ex-wife with respect. The ex-wife treats him with respect. I have one client who I'm just blown away. I'm like, you get it, you've got it. Like, and I didn't. He came to me with this, so I was like, oh, this is just wonderful. But when him and his wife got divorced, he came to the understanding that anyone who has a problem with how him and his ex-wife raised their children in separate homes is not aligned with him, and he will not entertain it. And he's been single for like 3 years now. And he said his last child is going to graduate in 2 years. The other one's in college. And he said, after that, I'm free to date anyone I want. Doesn't matter what, you know, it doesn't matter. But until my children are adults, if someone is not aligned with me going over there at 10 o'clock at night to fix a leaky dishwasher or whatever, if somebody has a problem with that, that's the mother of my children. If someone has a problem with that, then they're not right for me. And I'm like, I wish more dads were like that, you know, because it's not about, you know, oh, is he going to go over there and spend the night with her? Come on, you know, they're divorced. Like, let that go. This is the mother of your children. And when a lot of times what happens is they're like, I'm not going to help her. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Well, your kids are on the other end of you're not doing. Your children are the ones that suffer, the mom who's stressed out, the mom who's, you know, has low patience because she's got all this on her plate and no one is pitching in to help her. But everyone's there pointing the finger and criticizing. And if the kids step out of place with a behavioral issue, who's to blame? The mother, because she's the one raising them. And there's a lot of focus on blame. And not enough focus on it takes a community. It takes both parents. You can get divorced and still be a parent. And there's a lot of women out there who don't want their husbands involved in their kids and they use their kids as pawns. You're doing the same thing. You're harming your children. You're harming the kids. You're not you're hurting the other person, but they're a grown adult. You're putting programmed beliefs in your child's mind that will carry them for the rest of their life just because you're unhappy with a divorce or you're unhappy in a marriage. And so the sooner we do our work on trauma, and going back to, I think you were asking, when I break down all of the trauma, I don't care what it is, it seems to always go back to sexual trauma as a child. When you break down all the different components, somehow it always comes back to I was helpless, so now, you know, they're first responders because they want to help other people, or they're nurses, or they're, you know, they go into fields where they can help other people because they were helpless. Or you see them going into relationships that are toxic and damaging because they want to have a sense of control because the control was taken away from them. So now they want to be in control. You know, so you see a lot of unhealed wounds, and it all, like, we'll go through, you know, oh, my mother this, my mother that. Well, what you're really mad about is your mom didn't protect you from what happened to you. And that wasn't your mom's fault. Your mom didn't, if she knew what was going on, she probably would have beat the heck out of somebody. But she didn't know what was going on. But your anger at her for not protecting you shows up in all these little petty ways, in all these little other ways that really, when you get down to the core issue, and it's that. And one of my most, like, it's worth more than any dollar amount. It's worth anything in the world when I have a client who calls me up and says, I just had a great conversation with my mother or father, or I just spent the weekend with my parents and it was so healing and we got so much done. Because there's a right way and a wrong way to address those traumas in our childhood. And one is, you weren't there for me. And I'm guilty of it. I've done it. You weren't there for me, and you this or you that. And the parent is like, just wants to defend themselves. Well, I didn't know. And if I would have known, I would, you know, and it's like this whole traumatic event being recreated. But when it's, you know, I struggled many years with this because my belief was that you didn't care because this happened and you didn't do anything about it. And the parent has the opportunity to say, oh gosh, you know what was going on at the time? Your grandmother this, and this was happening, and that was happening, and I was not present. I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Now you have a different conversation. It's not a defense. It's not a, well, I had this going on, I had that going on, and you shouldn't be mad at me. It's a totally different conversation because it's healing. It's not blaming. It's cause finding, not fault finding. And a lot of therapists are out there fault finding, terminate your relationship with your parents, get away from them. No, set boundaries, have respect, honor your parents, even if they didn't honor you. Honor your parents, and they will honor you. They'll feel a little stupid if they don't, you know. So if they're being disrespectful and you're being kind and respectful, and you simply say, you know, I'm not talking to you in that tone. Are you angry about something? And they're, oh no, I'm not angry. They're not even consciously aware that they're talking to you derogatorily. They're not even aware. But when you can say that with the freedom, now they're aware. Oh, I got to watch my tone. Oh, I have to, you know, and it's not that you have to tiptoe around people, but you want to be your best self. I want to be my best self for my kids. So if my adult child says, your tone triggers me, I'm going to shift my tone because I love my child and I don't want my child to feel triggered. But if I'm like, well, too bad, I'm me, you deal with it. Well, where's that going to go? You're not going to get anywhere. You're not.
Yeah. I think you just hit the right point there. Self-awareness. That's part of, you know, what I used to teach. When we become aware of who we are, who we really are, in the present moment, we can just see that most of those beliefs and thoughts and trauma and everything have been part of our journey, and it has helped shape who we are now. But if you're able to actually find out, you know, like self-acceptance, actually, how do I put it? Being present enough to define yourself, you know, Um, yeah, it goes a long way in helping us understand that everybody, most people, you know, are just acting out what they do
Yeah,
based on their own level of consciousness. And
yeah.
you cannot really blame people for what they do. Um,
And I say that
yes, you
more
can hold
often
them
now.
responsible. Yeah, there's a responsibility, you know, that people have towards others, but you cannot really blame them if they are doing what they're doing because that's how they've been programmed. And
Right.
if yes, it's a lot of work, you know, but if you're lucky to get to adulthood, you know, you will understand that, you know, that you yourself have also caused problems. Like you said, you've done
Right.
some things that you're not very proud of, but it's still part of your own journey. It's part of your learning journey. If you didn't do them then, you wouldn't be who you are now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
And that's part of like falling in love with yourself, learning to love yourself, is to be able to look at those things and be able to say, wow, if I knew better, I would have done better. So I forgive myself, and now I'm going to do better. Like Maya Angelou says, you know, like when you know better, you do better. Well, you also can use that to forgive yourself. I didn't know better. If I did, I would have done
you
something
were doing
different.
your best at the time. Like you felt that was the best thing to do
At the time.
at the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it is. We're on a continuous learning journey. Nobody ever gets to the highest, whatever high, or else we'll be God. So we are humans. We're here to learn. I believe life is a school, and it keeps teaching us things, you know, in stages. Even right now, there are things that you look back on maybe in the next 10 years, and you'll be like, wow, I yeah. So
What was
these
I
stages,
thinking?
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no way to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. We
No.
all have our flaws. We all have
Yeah.
our weaknesses. And there are even, I mean, there's something called blind sides where we don't even know that we don't know what we're doing. So there's some things that we're doing unconsciously that we feel is okay, but it takes somebody else to point it out to you. You
Yeah.
know,
And that's like the dying words of Jesus is what I find myself saying more and more every single day. They know not what they do. They know not
exactly.
what they do. They know not what they do. So, like here in America, we have the Black Lives Matter, and we have a lot of peaceful protesting, and then we have looting and rioting. And for me, I get very disappointed, not angry, but disappointed in white women and men who go from their little white suburbs and go into black neighborhoods and spray paint BLM on the building of a black business owner and start looting and rioting. How dare you call anyone a bigot for not marching with you, but yet you're going in and destroying somebody else's culture, neighborhood, freedom to make money. You're threatening their survival, and you're saying it in the name of their lives matter. What about the 9-year-old girl that got shot just because she was walking down the street? Or, I mean, there are so many children that are being killed right now by opposing gang members because their parents are in the gang, or parents are in the gangs. No one's marching, no one's talking about it, no one's upset. But when we have a way to pull political stunts, suddenly you have white women telling other white women, you're a bigot if you don't march with us. And it's like, they know not what they do. Like their hearts are in the right place. Kudos to you. You're trying to hear the voice of someone else. And I applaud that. However, spray paint BLM on your own garage door. Would you do it? No. Then don't go into another neighborhood and do that. You know, don't go, if you're not going to go into your own business and write BLM on your own business and smash your own windows. Don't go into a small business owner. No one's doing that to Nike. No one's doing that to the 1% corporations that are running our world. They're doing this to small business owners who are trying to build something and leave a legacy for their children. And you're saying that their lives matter by destroying it? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So instead, they know not what they do. They know not what they do, but I'm not going to participate, and I'm not going to judge it. And I'm not going to, but I'm not going to participate. I'm just going to send it love and hope that they see that their actions may be well-intended, because I've done it. I've been guilty of it. My actions were well-intended, but they actually produced the opposite of what I wanted. And that's because my belief system was not straight. You know, the belief system in there somewhere, it's like, oh, we're gonna defend lives matter. We're gonna defend this, and we're gonna do this. Yeah, you're doing it all for your ego, but then you're going home to your neighborhood. You don't see any of that. No one's destroying your business, and no one's doing anything to you. So are you really saying Black Lives Matter? I got to question that. I got to question whether or not you are racist yourself when you're destroying someone else's property in the name of making their life matter. So, so I'm really conflicted on that, but I just keep saying they know not what they do. They know not what they do. They know not what they do, and I just hope that it gets revealed and people can get past it, because anyone who did participate in that and starts to see, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe, yeah, that really doesn't help them, does it? There should be no shame. No shame, because if you tell the truth, you shame the devil, right?
Yeah.
So it's
yeah, it's been a very interesting discussion. We've done about 1 hour, so yeah, I think we should be rounding up now. Yeah, so where can our viewers find you online if anyone wants to join your group, or if anyone is interested in your coaching call? How can they find you online?
Thank you so much. www.noelledodge.com. You can go to my website, and that's where the information on the bond program, testimonies, things like that, that's all on there. So, and right now, you know, if you search bond on Facebook, you'll find it, but the groups are closed. So there's also a free group on Facebook called Breaking It Down, which they can find me there too. And if you send me an instant message, we can communicate and help that way too. So there's a number of ways, but mostly I would say Breaking It Down on Facebook, or my website, www.noelledodge.com. So.
All right. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for sharing your wisdom. Namaste.
Thank you for sharing yours.
All right.
Have a great day. Bye.